Hello and welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold, and this week I'm joined by Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report, co-hosting for the 6th week in a row. Chris, thank you for joining me again this week.
Thanks for having me again.
Panic in Tiger Town, because for the Tigers, it was an 0-6 record this week against the Cleveland Guardians and the Atlanta Braves in the final homestand of the 2025 regular season. An 0-3 record versus the Guardians at Comerica Park, an 0-3 record versus the Braves at Comerica Park. Are you slamming the panic meter right now? I know we talked about a postseason panic meter. Like, how would you feel about how they're going to play once they get to the playoffs? But now we're at a point where this team still has to get to the playoffs.
You know, I was trying to be reasonable and say, oh, it's a medium level of panic. But yeah, this is as high as it possibly could be, right? Like, whatever is above high, that's where they are. Like, that was the worst possible outcome for a week of baseball, possibly ever. I mean, I guess Cleveland went 6-1 instead of 7-0. That could have been worse. But to go 0-6 against the team that is right behind you, or 0-3 against the team that's right behind you, and then lose the next 3 games, and a couple of them in absolutely excruciating fashion, I don't know how you don't panic right now.
Tuesday's 7-5 loss in extra innings to the Guardians. It was the first game of the series. The Tigers were down 3-2 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. Kerry Carpenter enters as a pinch hitter for Jahmai Jones, facing Guardians closer Cade Smith. It was the left on right matchup the Tigers wanted for Kerry Carpenter, and it was in the biggest moment of the game. And Kerry Carpenter delivers a monster home run to center field to tie the game 3-3. And then the 10th inning happens. The Guardians scored 4 runs in the top of the 10th off Will Vest. Stephen Kwan doubled. Angel Martinez tripled. Jose Ramirez doubled. Kyle Manzardo doubled. Those were the first 4 batters for the Guardians against Will Vest. And then later on, Gabriel Arias has an RBI single. That makes it 7-5. And then later on, Gabriel Arias had an RBI single to make it 7-3 Guardians. And the Tigers end up losing 7-5. I think that game set the tone for the entire series and really for the homestand as a whole. But in that series, that gave the Guardians all the momentum. It sucked the life out of the Tigers. And then the Tigers had nothing in the final 2 games. They lost 4-0 on Wednesday and they lost 3-1 on Thursday. And at that point in time, the Guardians had then won 7 games in a row. And then you go to Saturday's 6-5 loss in the 9th inning against the Braves. The Tigers had already lost 10-1 to the Braves in Friday's series opener. And if you thought that things couldn't get any worse after that, you were wrong. Because in Saturday's game, you have top of the 9th inning, runners on the corners, 2 strikes, 2 outs. The Tigers had a 5-4 lead, and all Will Vest needed against Nacho Alvarez Jr. was 1 more strike. He throws an up and away fastball, his 3rd fastball in that same location during the at-bat, and Alvarez slaps it into right field, drives in the game-tying run. It makes it 5-5. And don't forget, right before that, Will Vest had a wild pitch that allowed the runner to advance to third base. So not only did Will Vest give up the hit, but his wild pitch, it didn't even give the Tigers a chance for a play at the plate. You know, runner on second, ball into right field, there's going to be a play at the plate, but runner was on third. So that made it 5-5. And then Jurickson Profar comes through with a 2-strike, 2-out single off Will Vest's slider, making it 6-5 Braves in the top of the 9th inning. The Tigers went 3 up, 3 down in the bottom of the 9th, and that's how Saturday's game ended. After Saturday's game, manager AJ Hinch described it as, quote, an absolute punch right to the face, end quote. The Tigers then lost 6-2 in Sunday's series finale against the Braves. And at that point, the Braves had won 7 games in a row. And don't sleep on the Braves roster, by the way. They've had so many players injured throughout the season, including a ton of pitchers who are out for the season, which is why they have a losing record. But that lineup is real. Like Jurickson Profar, Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna Jr., this Derek Baldwin rookie who has some pop. Ozzie Albies, Ha-Sung Kim, whom the Braves claimed off waivers from the Rays, which kept intact Ha-Sung Kim's $16 million player option. So he could opt in and be the Braves shortstop next season. I would have loved to see the Tigers pursue Ha-Sung Kim off waivers, but instead he goes to the Braves and could be back for the Braves in 2026 as well. And then don't forget about Marcell Ozuna, Michael Harris II at the bottom of the lineup. Like, that's a pretty complete lineup that's only really missing Austin Riley, their star third baseman who's out for the season. Like, if you had to pick Tigers lineup, Braves lineup, what lineup are you going with? Because I'm going with the Braves, even without Austin Riley healthy. When you just look at that depth, I mean, you got Marcell Ozuna and Michael Harris II batting down at the bottom of your order. It's an impressive lineup. And then a superstar in Ronald Acuna Jr. That's a good team.
Yeah, this was a team that had championship aspirations and won a championship in the not too distant past, right? And that was, the Tigers caught them at the worst possible time. They caught the Marlins at the worst possible time. They caught the Guardians at the worst possible time. It's sometimes things just conspire against you. And you could certainly play a whole lot better. The Tigers had a lot of chances to drive in runs at some of these games. It didn't get the job done. The pitching failed them at the key moments. You don't go through a stretch like this kind of epic collapse without a couple things, without another team going on a crazy heater. You think about Minnesota last year and the Tigers, the other position. And, Cleveland was putting together a stretch of pitching that has been done like 4 or 5 times in the last 50 years. And meanwhile, the Tigers can't execute anything. And so it all feels like I just pictured like this boulder heading down a hill and the entire team is there pushing it. And then no matter what they do, it's just going. There's just a gravity to this. It's tough to figure out how to stop.
I'm not trying to make excuses for the Tigers. I'm just saying, the Braves have a better lineup than the Tigers. And the Braves proved it in the 3-game series. And the Tigers pitching could not do anything about it. Like that's my real concern here. I know the Tigers offense has been brutal, scoring like 2.5 runs per game in the last 10 games. But the pitching just cannot stop any offense these days. Like look at this past 6-game homestand. The Guardians scored 7 runs. 4 runs, 3 runs. The Braves scored 10 runs, 6 runs, 6 runs. The Tigers pitching staff gave up 6 runs per game during the 6-game homestand. You can't expect to win that way. Like good offenses are hitting Tigers pitching. And that's the point that I'm trying to make about the Braves lineup. Like that is a good offense and they hit Tigers pitching. Scott Harris, the Tigers president of baseball operations, he has talked time and time again about how he has built this team on pitching and defense. I don't know how you can look at this pitching staff and say that he did a good job. He inherited Tarek Skubal. Like, what pitcher did Scott Harris acquire that he can hang his hat on? Tyler Holton off waivers? Like, that was nearly 3 years ago. So my point is, if the Tigers get into the postseason, if they get there, this pitching staff is going to have its hands full because outside of Tarek Skubal and Kyle Finnegan, a recent Scott Harris pickup, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And again, they have to get into the playoffs. And that's where we have to look into where we're at, right? The MLB standings, with a look at the playoff picture, as of Monday morning, the Tigers have an 85-71 record for first place in the American League Central, ahead of the Cleveland Guardians by 1 game. The Guardians, by the way, currently hold the tiebreaker with a 6-4 record in the 13-game season series. So as long as the Guardians win 1 of the next 3 games in the head-to-head matchup, they'll own the tiebreaker over the Tigers if the 2 teams have the same record at the end of the season. On July 8th, the Guardians trailed the Tigers by 15.5 games. On September 10th, the Guardians trailed the Tigers by 9.5 games. And as we sit here on the morning of September 22nd, the Guardians trailed the Tigers by just 1 game, with 6 games remaining for both teams, including 3 games against each other. The Tigers have lost 6 games in a row. The Tigers have lost 9 of 10 games. Tigers have won just 7 of their last 25 games. If the regular season ended right now, again, the morning of September 22nd, the Tigers would be the number 3 seed in the American League, which would mean a best of 3 wildcard series against the Guardians at Comerica Park. Remember, only the top 2 American League division winners get byes to the ALDS. So here are the 6 postseason teams from the American League if the regular season ended right now. Toronto Blue Jays as the AL East leaders with a bye to the best of 5 ALDS. Seattle Mariners as the AL West leaders with a bye to the best of 5 ALDS. The Detroit Tigers as the AL Central leaders set for the best of 3 wildcard series. New York Yankees as the first wildcard team. Boston Red Sox as the second wildcard team. Cleveland Guardians as the third wildcard team. Right now, the Houston Astros are on the outside looking in. They made the postseason 8 years in a row. So we'll see if that streak comes to an end. Well, according to Fangraphs, the Tigers have an 84.8% chance to make the postseason, a 63.6% chance to win the AL Central, and a 4.5% chance to clinch a bye to the ALDS. So you can throw that bye out the window and let's focus on the 63.6% chance to win the AL Central and the 84.8% chance to make the postseason. Let's start right there. How do we feel about an 84.8% chance to make the postseason, and shifting that into, I know we touched on it already, but the panic meter, it's just crazy. For the past couple of weeks, we talked about the panic meter for the postseason performance. Assuming the Tigers were going to get in, now we got to go back to the original panic meter. How do we feel about an 84.8% chance to make the postseason?
Well, not great. Not great when it was 99% forever. It's kind of unfathomable. I know a lot of people were like projecting this because people like to be negative, but you just don't see a first place team go 1-9 over a 10 game stretch. And then the team right behind them go 9-1. You don't see it. It almost never happens. And you can go throughout baseball history. There have been some epic collapses, but not like this. So it's hard to feel good about anything. The only positive thing you can take away is that it's still all right in front of them. That basically what we've got now is the playoffs start now. Tuesday is the beginning of the playoffs. The Tigers, and they have their 1 and 2 starters going, right? It's Skubal, it's Flaherty. You go out there, take care of business. I know they haven't been doing that all month, but you still have a chance to do that. You win 2 or 3 against Cleveland, you're basically in. You win 2 or 3 against Boston, you're golden, right? You're probably still a 3 seed. Now you can dream and go 6-0. Hey, that's fun. No, they haven't won 6 in a row all year. Now would be a good time to do it. But yeah, like I said, like they played really good baseball for the first 3 months of the year, kind of averages baseball for the next 2. And it's been off a cliff in September. You just gotta put it together, play one game at a time. I know that's, it's been Hinch's thing all year. Basically his whole managerial tenure here is play for today's game. It hasn't been working lately, but it still can. They still have a chance. They got to go and do it.
6 games remaining in the regular season. 3 games against the Cleveland Guardians, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 3 games against the Boston Red Sox, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those games being played against the Guardians at Progressive Field, against the Red Sox at Fenway Park. All right, let's get into the big 2. Question 1 of the big 2. The Tigers have collapsed in the AL Central race. Who deserves blame for what has happened? Is it Scott Harris? Is it AJ Hinch? The players? Ownership? Who deserves blame for what has happened here with the Detroit Tigers in the 2025 season?
I talked before, like something like this, it takes an extraordinary set of circumstances for something like this to happen. So the blame goes everywhere, right? I think. But it's a results-based business. So you look at ownership, you look at the president, the general manager, put the roster together. But like I said, like that's where the buck stops there, right? But everything needs to go wrong for something like this to happen. And it kind of, not to get morbid, it reminds me like a plane crash, right? Like a plane crash, most of the time it's pilot error. But those big commercial air crashes, like 8 bad things need to happen before the pilot makes the fatal error. Like, somebody forgot to check a valve, or somebody turned off a switch. Somebody didn't listen to the air traffic control. It just takes a little bit of everything. And you kind of talk about some of that. You touched on it. Now I'll give Tarek Skubal a pass, right? He's been great all year. He hasn't done anything wrong for the most part. He got slightly hurt that one game. He's fine. He's been great. Everybody else, it's just come at the worst possible time. So you talk about, Kerry Carpenter hit that 2-out home run to tie the game off Kate Smith. That could have been a season-defining moment. Spencer Torkelson, past Saturday, hit that 2-run homer. Could have been a season-defining moment. And Torkelson's been great for September, really. And then after both instances, Will Vest, who has been very good all year, completely melts down in ways that don't make any sense. And Finnegan gave up a home run on Saturday too, but it was Vest that gave up the game. So Torkelson had that huge moment on Saturday. The next day, and again, Torkelson's been really good. He goes 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts, leaves 7 men on base. It's just like everything is going wrong at the precisely wrong time. And I don't know. I like the way I view it. I kind of have like a fatalistic view on baseball at times. And obviously you go out and you try to make the best moves you possibly can. That's something that Scott Harris has talked about forever. Go stack positive moves. But sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I look at, and again, I'm not excusing the front office at all, but I look at the New York Mets. The New York Mets have done everything that Tigers fans wanted them to do. They signed big free agents. They went out and spent $165 million on free agents last year. They got Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea. They re-signed Pete Alonso. They signed Juan Soto. And a lot of those moves have worked out well. They made big deals at the trade deadline. They needed a center fielder. They needed some bullpen help. They went out and they got, Tyler Rogers, who's been one of the best relievers in baseball. They went out and got Ryan Helsley, who a lot of people wanted. I kind of wanted him. He's been a great closer for the last couple of years. They went and got Cedric Mullins. Not a huge deal, but they got a center fielder. And then they brought up the prospects. Bring up the prospects. They'll help. And they brought up Nolan McLean and Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong. Those are like 3 top 100 pitching prospects. And Nolan McLean's been great. And the Mets, who were in first place at the beginning of August, are now out of the playoffs and like 9 games behind. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to be super fatalistic. I'm not saying like you can't win, so don't try. But sometimes you try and you can't win. I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like things just all have to go wrong, and they all have, and everybody deserves blame. No one person could cause all this, and no one person can fix it.
I blame ownership, Scott Harris, the players. I'm not going to blame AJ Hinch, though, for what has happened. Here's why. He's one of the best managers in baseball. if not the best manager in baseball, according to his peers. He is the favorite to win AL Manager of the Year as long as the Tigers hold on. He has preached win today's game from the moment he arrived in Detroit, as you mentioned, and he has preached win the series all season long. For people who think AJ Hinch is to blame because he's not throwing a chair or yelling at the players, and this is 2025. It's a different era of baseball. It's a different era of players. I think AJ Hinch, with his psychology degree from Stanford, understands. And again, like, this is a guy who's received incredible reviews from current, former players about his communication styles. Like, I think he understands exactly what baseball players in 2025 need, and it's not screaming in their faces and throwing chairs in the clubhouse. So if AJ Hinch is the best manager in baseball, according to his peers, and if AJ Hinch is one of the best communicators, according to current and former players, if those two things are true, then does AJ Hinch deserve to be blamed for any of this? My case is closed there.
I agree with you. I don't put any blame on Hinch there. I mean, people complain about some of the moves that have been made or some of the moves that he doesn't make, but he has remained remarkably consistent all year. Like the other day, they brought in Trey Sweeney to pinch hit, and everybody's like, Trey Sweeney, like, he's been doing that all year. That's how they got to be in first place in 20 plus games over 500. He's not changed, and his demeanor, I don't think, has changed that much. And you can tell, you go down there, all the players are still working, the coaches are still working. I was down there for like half the game on Saturday. I asked him about facing Joey Wentz, because I was like, oh, this is a guy that you're familiar with. You know, he was pretty bad here and he's been good at Atlanta. What's different? What's the game plan? And he had a very detailed answer for me. He knew exactly what Wentz had changed, what he'd been doing better, and what they wanted the hitters to do. You know, if he's not throwing strikes, then lay off. If he is, you could attack. Didn't matter. The players couldn't execute the game plan against Joey Wentz, and that was another kick to the gut.
As for everyone else, I'm going to go all the way to the top. I think owner Christopher Ilitch deserves blame for what has happened to the Tigers. And here's why. I don't think he's very involved in what is required to win championships. Is he involved in the Tigers organization? Of course. But is he like Mets owner Steve Cohen, Yankees owner Hal Steinbrenner, Red Sox owner John Henry, Phillies owner John Middleton? Christopher Ilitch is not like those guys at all. If he were like them, the Tigers would have had Alex Bregman. They would have had Carlos Correa, not Javier Baez. They would have had George Springer, not Robbie Grossman. But Christopher Ilitch wants a sustainable winning team, but does he want a championship? I don't think Chris Ilitch is cheap. I'm not calling him cheap. I just think he cares about winning seasons more than championship seasons. And that's the biggest difference from when his late father, Mike Ilitch, was the owner of the Tigers. Do you think Chris Ilitch was involved in the Alex Bregman negotiations? He wasn't. That was Scott Harris doing those negotiations. But on the night that Alex Bregman signs with the Red Sox, instead of the Tigers, you have a photo of Red Sox owner John Henry smoking a victory cigar that surfaced on his wife's Instagram story. Where is Chris Ilitch smoking his victory cigar after signing Alex Bregman? And the Tigers right now, in this moment, are missing a leader in the clubhouse. Matt Vierling, Jake Rogers, those are good guys. They're glue guys. But they are not the kind of players who are going to drag you through the depths of hell into the postseason. The Tigers right now, like, they're in the baseball version of hell. Like, this has just been brutal, what they're going through. And they need someone to carry them out. And that someone is Alex Bregman, and he plays for the Boston Red Sox. Their leader was right in front of them this offseason in Alex Bregman, one of the best leaders in baseball, according to players and coaches. So there's nobody to blame but Christopher Ilitch for the Tigers not signing Alex Bregman. That's why I think Christopher Ilitch is the person who deserves the most blame for what has happened to the Tigers. The Tigers offered 6 years, $171.5 million to Alex Bregman with an opt-out clause after the 2026 season. Alex Bregman chose the offer from the Red Sox instead. But, and this is important, people, Alex Bregman sent 2 counter offers to the Tigers. Alex Bregman, represented by agent Scott Boras, sent 2 counter offers to the Tigers. 7 years, $200 million. 6 years, $185 million with an opt-out after the 2025 season. All the Tigers had to do was say yes. The fact that the Tigers said no to those offers from Bregman's camp, that falls on Chris Ilitch. Because my opinion is, if Chris Ilitch wanted a championship, he would have gotten involved in those negotiations and accepted one of the 2 offers that Bregman proposed to the Tigers. Because that's exactly what Red Sox owner John Henry did, and he wants a championship. Next on my list is President of Baseball Operations Scott Harris. I'm not going to dig too deep into the Scott Harris trade history, which includes these additions: Justin Henry Malloy, Matt Vierling, Nick Maton, Donnie Stans, Hao-Yu Lee, Liam Hicks, Tyler Owens, Chase Lee, Joseph Montalvo, Thyron Lorenzo, Trey Sweeney, Eric Silva, Chris Paddock, Randy Dobnik, Rafael Montero, Paul Sewald, Charlie Morton, Kyle Finnegan. What I am going to do is talk about the 2025 trade deadline, where Scott Harris made the Tigers a worse team. He prides himself on pitching and defense, but he made the starting pitching worse at the trade deadline, failed to do enough to improve the bullpen. I mean, it was September 21st and Tanner Rainey was pitching in a big league game for you. And then Scott Harris completely neglected to give the offense the boost that it needed. On July 31st, the Tigers acquired these 7 pitchers: Chris Paddock, Charlie Morton, Kyle Finnegan, Rafael Montero, Paul Sewald, Cody Hoyer, Randy Dobnak. Chris Paddock, 6.12 ERA, including a 5.40 ERA in 6 starts before the Tigers moved into the bullpen. Charlie Morton, 7.09 ERA in 9 starts, designated for assignment. Kyle Finnegan, 0.59 ERA in 15 1/3 innings, but he suffered an injury after being used more in August than any other month in his 6-year MLB career because he had to save the bullpen. Thankfully, he is healthy again. Rafael Montero, 3.10 ERA in 20 1/3 innings with 12 walks compared to just 18 strikeouts. Paul Sewald, 2 runs in his first 1 2/3 innings after returning from a right shoulder injury. His stuff looks terrible. We'll see if he's even on the postseason roster if the Tigers get there. Cody Hoyer, 5.40 ERA in 3 1/3 innings, already released. Randy Dobnak, 3.79 ERA in 38 innings for AAA Toledo, but the Tigers called up Tanner Rainey over him, which tells you everything you need to know about Randy Dobnak. Not a lot to be happy about there. Like, aside from Kyle Finnegan and some good luck from Rafael Montero, but when Scott Harris traded for Chris Paddock and Charlie Morton, he made the Tigers starting rotation worse. And by doing that, he made the pitching worse. But what did he expect? Chris Paddock had a 4.95 ERA before joining the Tigers. Charlie Morton had a 5.42 ERA before joining the Tigers. The fact that the Tigers were the best team in the American League with some of the best odds to win the World Series and Scott Harris made the team worse at the trade deadline, I think that's something that will stay on his resume forever unless the Tigers claw their way out of this and make a deep run in the 2025 postseason. And then he just didn't do enough to help the bullpen. It's been a tryout camp for the past 3 months. Carlos Hernandez, Bailey Horn, Luke Jackson, Cody Hoyer, Drew Summers, Jose Urquidy, Jeff Hartlib, Alex Lang, Paul Sewald, and that's after the Tigers tried Chase Lee, John Brebbia, Dietrich Enns, Dylan Smith, Matt Gage, Kenta Maeda. Hey, Scott, David Bednar has a 2.49 ERA with 30 strikeouts in 21 2/3 innings since joining the Yankees at the trade deadline. And he's under team control through 2026, so he's going to be with the Yankees again next season. Eugenio Suarez, power hitting third baseman, 11 home runs and 26 RBIs in 47 games since joining the Mariners at the trade deadline. Those players would have helped the Tigers. As Scott Harris likes to say, non-decisions are decisions. Scott Harris put his eggs in the Zach McKinstry, Javier Baez basket instead of getting Eugenio Suarez. Scott Harris put his eggs in the Drew Summers, Alex Lang, and apparently Tyler Madison, who we've never seen and are not going to see this year, in that basket instead of getting David Bednar. And then Scott Harris put his eggs in the Chris Paddock, Charlie Morton basket. Like, I understand why Tigers fans aren't happy with Scott Harris, and I didn't even mention the name Alex Cobb. So I know I just threw a lot at you. Chris Ilitch, Scott Harris. Does the blame fall on those guys? And maybe more importantly than anything, as crazy as this sounds, does this really trace back to Alex Bregman? Would Alex Bregman make a difference for this team right now? Would you feel better about the Tigers' chances to come out of this and to make a deep run in the postseason and maybe win the World Series if there was a man named Alex Bregman on this roster right now? Does it go back to that?
I think absolutely. I think, to your point, talking about Chris Ilitch, people want Mike Ilitch. They want Mike Ilitch. They want Mike Ilitch to step in. They want Chris Ilitch to be Mike Ilitch and say, because if you leave Scott Harris to his own devices, he's going to try to make the best decision he can. And what he doesn't want to do is hamstring himself 5-6 years down the road with an aging player with a big contract. What you want is the owner to say, don't worry about it. You make that deal. I'll take care of that. I won't blame you down the road when he's not good. Chris Ilitch, I'm not in those conversations. Maybe Chris Ilitch did. And Scott Harris said, no. We want to make the smart move. I don't know. But he's the owner, right? What he says goes. If he said, I don't care, go get Alex Bregman, I think Scott Harris would have done it, right? You don't want to displease your boss. So I think it starts there. You've got a third baseman all year long, a leader, like you said, that makes a huge difference. I think, in the moves, it's the track record with those trades at the deadline. They speak for themselves, right? I've seen some other people talk about like, hey, look at the guys that they let go, like Dietrich Enns, PJ Poulin, Matt Gage. All these guys have been doing well at other teams. That's annoying. For certainly, I do think that it would you can't have it both ways, right? If Scott Harris hadn't made trades and said, We didn't need to get anybody. We've got PJ Poulin. I think people would have been like, But I guess ultimately, I just kind of hope, and for Tigers fans' sakes, I think they all need to hope that he learns from this. He takes something away from this and says, you know what? I can't do these half measures, Walter White style, right? Like you either have to go all the way in or sit out. You can't, because you just tried to make these little moves. And as you said, basically none of them worked out. And Cal Finnegan's been great, but the other ones made the team worse. And that's tough.
And then we can't forget about the players. Since August 24th, Tarik Skubal has a 1.80 ERA. He gets a pass here. But Casey Mize has a 4.97 ERA. Jack Flaherty has a 5.04 ERA. Bill Bull starters have looked a little bit better as of late. Will Vest has a 6.48 ERA. Tyler Holton has a 4.63 ERA. Parker Meadows, Dylan Dingler, Gleyber Torres, Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, they have all been above average producers as regulars in the lineup since August 24th. But Riley Green has a 94 WRC+. Zach McKinstry has an 87 WRC+. Colt Keith had a 72 WRC+ before his injury. Wencio Perez has a 65 WRC+. And then both Javier Baez and Trey Sweeney have been unplayable. This collapse has been a team effort. Starting pitchers, relief pitchers, position players. The players deserve blame too.
You don't go, 6-24 or whatever over a 30-game span without everybody failing to pull their weight. And the number's even worse for Green and Perez in just September. So, like I said, it's a total team effort to build a winner, and it's a total team effort to collapse. And all you can hope is that they somehow pull out of this tailspin, but it's not looking great.
Question 2 of the big 2. What are our predictions for the upcoming AL Central defining series against the Guardians? On Tuesday, it's Tarik Skubal versus Gavin Williams. On Wednesday, it's Jack Flaherty versus Tanner Bybee. On Thursday, it's TBD versus Parker Messick. The Guardians have won 10 of their last 11 games, including a 10-game winning streak that was snapped in Sunday's series finale against the Twins. The Guardians have won 15 of their last 17 games. They've also posted a 44-24 record, 20 games above 500 since July 7th. So these guards are rolling, and they have been rolling for a while now. It all starts with the pitching for Cleveland, specifically the starting pitching as of late. Since September 5th, the Guardians starters rank first in MLB with a 1.25 ERA. During that same stretch, Guardians relievers rank third in MLB with a 2.40 ERA. The Guardians bullpen is well rested coming into the series against the Tigers. Their closer, Cade Smith, has not pitched since Friday, so he should be available for all 3 games against the Tigers if he's needed. The one thing we can't forget here is that the Tigers have the best pitcher in the world, that's Tarik Skubal, scheduled to start Tuesday's series opener against the Guardians at Progressive Field. That also lines up Skubal to start Sunday's series finale, the final game of the regular season against the Boston Red Sox at Fenway Park if needed. As for the Guardians, Skubal just faced them this past Thursday in the series finale at Comerica Park, which the Tigers lost 3-1. He has allowed 1 run on 7 hits and 2 walks with 9 strikeouts across 6 innings, including a home run from Big Christmas. That's what Tarik Skubal did in that game against Cleveland most recently. When we see pitchers have back-to-back starts against the same team, it usually is advantage hitter. And Tarik Skubal just gave up 7 hits in 6 innings to the Guardians in the first game of back-to-back matchups. So maybe that's a reason to be a little bit concerned, but it's Tarik Skubal and it's the biggest game of the season. And we're going to see if the best pitcher in the world steps up. I would not bet against Tarik Skubal. But like I said, Tuesday, Tarik Skubal versus Gavin Williams. Wednesday, Jack Flaherty versus Tanner Bybee. Thursday, TBD versus Parker Messick. What are your thoughts on this upcoming series? And do the Tigers have it in them to win, let's say, 2 of 3?
Yeah, if these teams play like they've been playing, the Guardians are going to find a way to go 4-0 in a 3-game series. Like, it's a bit absurd. So, like I said before, you just got to wipe the slate clean. This is the playoff start now. You've got your ace on the mound. Have him go out and give you his best effort. And his best effort is better than just about anybody else on the planet. So you just got to fight. You got to fight in the batter's box, and you got to play clean baseball, something they haven't been doing lately, but they have the chance now. You split the season in half, and Cleveland has been the better team, even though their offense is still not any good. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're getting beat by guys like Bo Naylor.
Their offense is one of the worst in baseball. It's terrible.
But you look at the second half, the Tigers offense hasn't been significantly better, and the pitching has been much worse. Still, you try to think about the course of the entire season. And I think over the course of the entire season, The Tigers are the better team, but it's gotten awfully close now. So it's just going to take some timely hitting and some quality pitching. It's not, it's not a huge mystery, right? You hit the ball, you catch the ball. It's like old Bull Durham saying, excuse me. But yeah, I think they've got a chance to take 2 or 3. You've got your 2 best starters, theoretically, your game 1, game 2 starter. Game 3, I might, depending on how things go beforehand, I think I might try to start Brant Hurter or Tyler Holden for an inning or 2, just to try to get that lesser, like we said, the Guardians don't hit anything except suddenly they do. But it's like an 80 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. And it's 90 against right-handed pitching. But, you give yourself whatever little advantage you can get, if it's possible to do that. We don't know if, maybe they have to use Herter and Holden, on Wednesday night and they can't, but that's what I would go if possible.
To your point about the Guardians, an 80 WRC plus against left-handed pitchers, a 90 WRC plus against right-handed pitchers. So they're better against right-handed pitchers than left-handed pitchers. I'm really worried about this Tigers bullpen. Right now, it's 3 starters and 11 relievers, with those relievers being Kyle Finnegan, Will Vest, Tommy Kahnle, Rafael Montero, Troy Melton, Tyler Holton, Brant Hurter, Paul Sewald, Chris Paddock, Kiter Montero, and Tanner Rainey. 1, there's not enough quality depth there. 2, the Tigers have just 2 lefties in their bullpen, Tyler Holton and Brant Hurter. The other 2 lefties, Bailey Horn and Drew Summers, are stuck in the option cycle. And for those wondering why the Tigers called up Tanner Rainey over Brendan Hanafy, it's because Hanafy is stuck in the option cycle as well. When you option a pitcher, he cannot return for 15 days unless there's an injury. So the Tigers, with all of their roster shuffling, have created a roster mess. They're stuck with Tanner Rainey instead of Brendan Hanafy, and they can't get access to either Drew Summers or Bailey Horn for the upcoming 3-game series against the Guardians. Having just 2 left-handed relievers in the bullpen, it's a problem. The Guardians have 7 left-handed hitters and 3 switch hitters among their 14 position players, including their best players. Steven Kwan, left-handed hitter. Jose Ramirez, switch hitter. Cal Manzardo, left-handed hitter. The best way to neutralize Kwan and Manzardo is to target them with left-handed relievers. But the Tigers have just 2 lefties in their bullpen because they can't access Bailey Horn or Drew Summers. So it's really a shame that the Tigers are going into this pivotal series with only 3 left-handed pitchers, Tarek Skubal, Tyler Holton, and Brant Hurter. I think that could come back to bite them. I know Bailey Horn has not been perfect. He's walked a ton of guys. I know Drew Summers isn't perfect either. He's given up a lot of hits, even some big hits to left-handed hitters. But at the same time, being able to throw Bailey Horn or Drew Summers at one of those lefties, Kyle Manzardo, Steven Kwan, to specifically target them would be a huge advantage, especially like you mentioned. You mentioned Thursday's game. Thursday's game could be the biggest game of the season. Series finale, if both teams split the first 2 games, that game on Thursday could mean everything. If you use Brant Hurter or Tyler Holton early in one of those games, let's say that maybe you burned one of them in the first 2 games, so you only have one of those 2 lefties to use, how can you use Brant Hurter as an opener if Tyler Holton is down? Like if Tyler Holton is unavailable to pitch Thursday, how can you feel comfortable using Brant Hurter as an opener knowing that you have no other lefties available in the bullpen? Because once that bullpen door opens, once you go to Brant Hurter, you can't get him back. You can't get him back. So I think the Tigers going into this series with only 2 left-handed relievers could really burn them. Like that could be what comes back to haunt them. And that's a product of their roster shuffling. We talked about their series by series approach, trying to give themselves the best chances to win. That's why we saw all the roster shuffling, especially with the bullpen. It was like reliever roulette with the Tigers, and it's now come back to haunt them.
Yeah, it's part of it's an artifact of all that, winning, playing for this series. But beyond that, it's part of not having consistent, reliable bullpen pieces you can count on. You don't have to make all these moves if you got guys you can count on every time.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're joined by Paul Hoynes, the Cleveland Guardians beat writer for Cleveland.com. Everyone, I'd like to welcome Paul Hoynes, the Cleveland Guardians beat writer for Cleveland.com, to the Days of Roar podcast for the 2nd week in a row, because this American League Central race is the talk of baseball right now. Paul Hoynes has been the beat writer covering the baseball team in Cleveland since 1983. Paul, thank you for joining me for the 2nd week in a row.
No problem, Evan.
Hey, are you surprised the Guardians finally lost? Obviously, in Sunday's series finale against the Twins, they took the defeat. For the first time in 10 games, what was that like? And are you surprised that it finally happened?
The way they have been playing, if they do anything but win, I guess it is a little bit of a surprise, but you can't win. You can't keep winning. Everybody has to lose at one point, but this is a tough time to lose, with just, 6 games left and the division at stake and the wild card at stake as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, obviously going into the Tigers-Guardians series in Detroit, maybe it seemed like the Guardians were fighting for the wild card. Internally, are they still thinking wild card, or are they eyeing the AL Central considering where things are at right now?
I think they just want to get in. It doesn't matter how they get in. I was talking to Austin Hedges, their veteran catcher. He goes, wild card, division, it doesn't matter. We just want to get into the postseason and play in October. That's been their goal all along since day one of the season. So we'll see how it happens, but I don't think it really matters to them.
The way the Guardians have been playing, obviously they took care of business against the Chicago White Sox and obviously the Detroit Tigers, and then they won 3 in a row against the Minnesota Twins. What's it been like on this journey with them, especially recently when you look back, over the past 11 games, right? They've won 10 of 11 with their only loss coming in Sunday's series finale to the Twins. What's it been like for you on this journey with these guys, seeing all of this unfold?
I've got so many numbers in my head, Evan. I think it's going to explode. I don't know, winning streaks, pitching. It's just like, strange stuff. It's just, I've seen teams on winning streaks before. The Guardians, I think won 24 in a row. They won 22 in a row. But those teams, you kind of expected it because, they were quality teams. They were good teams. This team has, just kind of just been 500 for so long, or fighting to get above 500. And now they kind of exploded at the end of the season. It's really caught you by surprise. But the big thing, I think, from what I've seen is like in the last 16, 17 games, the starting pitching has been unbelievable. They're like 10-0 with a 1.30 ERA. They went to that 6-man rotation and it's paying dividends for them.
What was the reason for the 6-man rotation? And with where the Guardians starting rotation is at, again, you look at what they did against the Twins. First 3 games of the series, just guys pitching so deep into games. What was the reason for the 6-man rotation? And as you look ahead, obviously only 6 games left, but do you think that what they're doing from a starting pitching standpoint is going to be sustainable? Do they have enough left to continue to produce like we've seen them do, since they went to this 6-man rotation? So what was the reason for it, and can the success continue?
The reason for it was, their bullpen was really getting worn down. They were trying to find a way to, replace those couple innings they lost with Emmanuel Clase being, put on paid leave for gambling allegations. They wanted to go with a 6-man rotation to, cover the loss of Class A. And they were able to do that. One big reason they were able to do that is that the rosters expanded on September 1st. So they were able to add Joey Cantillo to the rotation. That gave them 6 guys. And it was also, it kind of gave them each starter an extra day's rest, so to speak. And I think that really helped them down the stretch here.
You mentioned the bullpen, trying to give those guys some extra rest. I noticed the Guardians did not pitch closer Cade Smith in either game of Saturday's doubleheader. And then he did not pitch in Sunday's series finale against the Twins either. How rested are the Guardians relievers going into Tuesday's series opener against the Tigers, especially the high leverage guys?
I think they were just, Hunter Gaddis and Matt Festa gave up home runs late today. And I think they were just in shock after having so much time off Saturday, not being able to pitch with, Stakoni going 7 innings and Logan Allen going 8 shutout innings. They really didn't need the pen. So, I don't know if they were too rested, but, I think, they're in pretty good shape right now. I really do. I think, Cade Smith, they really didn't have a lead, so to speak, for Smith to get in there, at least the lead late. And, and then the Saturdays were both blowouts.
You mentioned you have a lot of numbers in your head. I'm going to throw a bunch more at you really quick. The Guardians played 24 games in 24 days. That dates back to August 26th. They went, and it's very incredible, 18-6 during that stretch of 24 games in 24 days. They've won 15 of their past 17. With all the winning and with all the baseball being played, obviously both the Tigers and the Guardians have an off day on Monday. But do you think that these guys are going to run out of gas when you just consider what the starting pitching has had to do, the fact that the offense hasn't been scoring a lot of runs, the fact that they've just coming off playing 24 games in 24 days? Do you think the Guardians run out of gas, or do you think that this momentum is going to keep going and they can get to the finish line?
Yeah, I think, with teams that are in the hunt right now, going down the stretch with just 6, 7 games left, I think they're probably playing on adrenaline. They've been playing on adrenaline for like the last 40 games because, and I think there is a concern about that eventually it's exhausting to treat every game like a playoff game, which, they've basically been doing, since probably the All-Star break. I mean, Austin Hedges, who's kind of the team spokesman, said, we wanted, we started the season with the idea of winning the World Series. We don't care what else happens, but that was our goal, through good times and bad. We've believed in that. So, they haven't won a World Series since 1948 in Cleveland, Evan. So I don't know. That's a big ask, no matter how much talent you have.
Well, it's kind of what the Tigers did last year, right? When you go back to 2024 and you consider that they were playing like Game 7 pretty much from like mid-August all the way through the end of the season. And then obviously into the postseason once they eventually got in against the Astros in the wild card series and then against the Guardians in the ALDS. But it is that type of Game 7 mindset that the Tigers were in. And the question around the Tigers last year was, will this run out? Will they run out of gas, right? And it seems like the same questions are being asked about the Guardians, and you feel like they have what it takes to get to the finish line.
I do think, yes, especially the rotation. I haven't seen much fatigue in those guys. They've been going deeper into games. I mean, they've groomed these guys to go deeper into games all season. So, now you're seeing Logan Allen going he set a career high with 8 scoreless innings last night. Ciccone has been, a regular in the 6 to 7 inning range. Gavin Williams, the same. So those guys, have really kind of, taken it upon themselves to get deeper into games. And they've all, kind of passed their innings limits, it would seem. So, eventually will it catch up to them? I think it always does. But right now they seem really into the vibe of it, into the race,
The Tigers and Guardians just played 3 games at Comerica Park in Detroit not too long ago. Gavin Williams, he pitched in the 4-0 win for the Guardians. He threw 5 scoreless innings, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, gave up 3 hits. He threw 100 pitches. We saw what Gavin Williams can do against the Tigers just recently. What does he need to do to have success when it comes to Tuesday's game? Because that's going to be a big one for him. It is Tarik Skubal versus Gavin Williams. It is the ace of the Tigers and arguably the best pitcher in all of baseball against the ace of the Guardians, the budding ace of the Guardians in Gavin Williams. What are you looking for out of Williams in Tuesday's game if he wants to have repeat success against the Tigers and hang with Tarik Skubal?
Yeah, I think he has to get deeper into the games. They fouled off a lot of pitches against him, in Detroit. I think he's got to maybe, have a better mix of his pitches. Early in the season, he had problems with control. He walked a lot of people. He seemed to get on top of that and, tap that down. So I think he just needs to mix his pitches, not fall in love with his fastball. And pound the strike zone. Just keep throwing strikes. And if he does that, I think he'll get some quick innings and perhaps be able to get deeper into the game.
We saw Tanner Bybee in the Guardians' 3-1 win against the Tigers. We are going to see him again on Wednesday. He's facing off against Jack Flaherty. Tanner Bybee, last time against the Tigers, 6 innings, 1 run. It came on 4 hits and 2 walks. He had 8 strikeouts. So 6 innings of 1 run ball for Tanner Bybee. He threw 100 pitches in that game. It's back-to-back pretty solid starts for Tanner Bibee. Obviously, he goes the 9 scoreless with 10 strikeouts against the Chicago White Sox. And then he goes 1 run in 6 innings with 8 strikeouts against the Tigers. Has he found something here, do you think? Or maybe is he finding luck?
I think he's struggled all year. This hasn't been his best year, but Tanner, has finally kind of put things together. He's a tinkerer. He changes stuff from start to start. He's always, he takes deep dives into every start. And maybe I think he might go down a rabbit hole or two, but I think he was more aggressive against the Tigers, and that really worked out well for him with his fastball. Instead of, he had a tendency to, when he gets ahead 0-2, he'll make a mistake and give up a big hit, but he was really aggressive in that regard against Detroit, and it worked. And I think the last few starts, he's done that.
The Tigers are going to see Parker Messick in Thursday's series finale. And man, oh man, that could be a massive game between the Tigers and Guardians on Thursday. And it's going to be Parker Messick, who he's just a rookie. He just got here. I mean, this is a guy who has, yes, a 2.08 ERA in 6 starts in his MLB career, 5 walks, 31 strikeouts in 34 2/3 innings. The guy can throw the ball. He's been very successful so far this season. What do Tigers fans need to know about Parker Messick? And do you think he's ready to handle what could be maybe the biggest game of the season for the Guardians?
I mean, he's a polished kid. He's poised. He's poised on the mound. He's really aggressive in his pitching style. He doesn't throw. He doesn't overpower anyone, but he throws a lot of strikes. And if he gets ahead of you, he has a real good chance of putting you away. And, he likes to, if they give him an early lead, he really likes to take advantage of that, to put the pressure on the hitter, to make those hitters, make contacts, weak contact. He's an interesting guy. And I would think he's really confident as well. This will be a test for him, no doubt about it. Like you said, he's got 5 or 6 starts in the big leagues. And, at AAA, he's better in the big leagues than he was at AAA. So I guess, at least his numbers are. So I guess that's, a sign of progress, or that he was impatient. He couldn't wait to get here.
Before we get you out of here, I want to go back to the 3-game series between the Tigers and Guardians in Detroit. The Guardians won 7-5 on Tuesday, 4-0 on Wednesday, and 3-1 on Thursday. What were your biggest takeaways from that series where, going into it, I think the Tigers felt confident in where they were in the American League Central. And they knew, hey, we got this lead on the Guardians. As long as we win 1 or 2 games here, we're going to be all right. And then the Guardians just absolutely stun the Tigers. And it really did all start with that Tuesday game, which the Guardians won 7-5, where, it was Kerry Carpenter off the bench with a really, really big swing there in the late innings. And then in extra innings, Cleveland just steals it back in the top of the 10th inning with 4 runs. That happened in Tuesday's game, with the Guardians winning 7-5, and a huge momentum shift with the Kerry Carpenter home run and then Cleveland scoring 4 in the top of the 10th. But as you reflect back, Paul, on that 3-game series, what were your biggest takeaways from what the Guardians were able to do against the Tigers and how that may factor into the upcoming 3-game series?
Yeah, I just thought they really pitched well. Evan, the starters pitched well. The bullpen pitched well. Even Cade Smith, who gave up the home run to Kerry Carpenter, came back and pitched pretty well in his new closer's role. I thought they played like a team that really didn't have anything to lose to me. And the Tigers, I think, kind of might have been a little tight, but I think the Guardians, like you said, when they came back and scored those 4 runs in the 10th inning, on 4 straight extra base hits. I mean, that's only the 2nd time in franchise history that's happened from a team that, was like had the worst batting average in all of baseball. So there was some, I don't know. I think that series meant more to the Guardians than it did to the Tigers. And now, they're just about running like head to head right now, neck to neck. And I guess we'll see who's the better team, next week in Cleveland or starting Tuesday.
Yeah. If you thought the Tigers were tight in that 3-game series, they are really pressing now, especially after getting swept by the Atlanta Braves. I want to ask about the Guardians offense. Are you worried at all? Do you think that this offense is going to be able to continue to put up just enough runs to support the pitching staff? Because we've been over this a couple of times now. This Guardians Guardians offense is one of the worst in all of baseball, but the team's finding a way to win games, so they're scoring just enough runs.
Yeah, they're really streaky, and they're on a good streak right now, Evan. They didn't hit today. They scored 2 runs in the first inning and then were shut down. But they are right now, they're on a roll. And when these guys get on a roll, it really doesn't matter. They hit 1 through 9. They get, they can run a little bit. They're getting a little power. They hit in Saturday's first game of the doubleheader, they hit 5 home runs. Quan hit a leadoff home run today. I don't, I've seen them go hot and cold so often. So, a cold streak, it could be, just around the corner for these guys because they have been so hot. And they, the last, I think 22, 23 games, they're hitting over 340 with runners in scoring position. And that has really fueled them, throughout the whole season. When they get on a roll, they're dangerous with 2 outs and with runners in scoring position.
Last thing, take me inside the Cleveland Guardians clubhouse. What's it like in there? Because I'll tell you, in the Tigers clubhouse, it's not great right now. There was a lot of denial, and then there was some anger, some frustration. And then now we're at a point where Tigers players are just, they've had to accept it. They've been forced to accept the situation that they're in. So you go from denying it as in, we still got this big lead in the AL Central. It's all going to be okay. We're in a good place. Just some frustration as the Guardians sweep and the Braves are piling it on. And then now it's a point where it's like, okay, now we really got to play for our season here. That's the Tigers clubhouse. What's the Guardians clubhouse looking like from a vibe standpoint? Are these guys checking the standings? Are they seeing what the Tigers are doing? Are the Tigers games on the TVs in the clubhouse when the Guardians aren't playing their games? Like, take me inside a little bit of what's going on there with that ball club.
Yeah, it's the same as it was in April. I mean, it's loose. There's laughter. They're talking. The music was playing after the game today. When you lose, you usually don't hear the music. But these guys are really confident right now. They're a confident team. I think Wedge came in and talked to them after the game today, told them, you're coming off a great road trip. We really earned this off day Monday, by playing, what was it, 24 games in 24 days. Enjoy it. But his message was keep the momentum going. And he asked Cleveland fans to pack out Progressive Field for this upcoming series. So we'll see how it goes. But I didn't sense any tension at all.
I can tell you there has been no music being played in the Tigers clubhouse after losses as of late. All right, Paul, thank you for all the insight about the Cleveland Guardians, and we'll see what happens. Both teams have 6 games remaining. The Tigers and Guardians play 3 of those games against each other. The Tigers currently have a 1-game lead in the American League Central. Once again, Paul Hoynes, thank you for joining the Days of Roar podcast.
All right, Evan. Thanks for having me.
Everyone, that was Paul Hoynes, the Cleveland Guardians beat writer for Cleveland.com. We have more to discuss this week about the Tigers, but first, let's take a break. Thanks again to Paul Hoynes for joining us for the second week in a row to talk about the Tigers and Guardians. It was really important when we had him on last time, and it feels like it's even more important right now. Tigers versus Guardians, 3 more games remaining in the season series, and it feels like it's for all the marbles. All right, we're back with Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report. Let's get into Colt Keith. He is going to miss the remainder of the regular season with an intercostal strain. So he gets placed on the injured list that rules him out for the rest of the season. He suffered the injury in Thursday's game. How does his absence impact the Tigers offense? Because I know he wasn't swinging the hottest of bats, but at the same time, Colt Keith, he had been the Tigers' leadoff hitter against right-handed pitchers for quite some time. He's a young, up-and-coming player who the Tigers obviously have high hopes for. Regardless of Colt Keith's performance, however you want to look at it, whether you say, hey, he doesn't hit for enough power, or hey, the guy's only hitting 250, 260, like if you want to call that a blemish on his resume because you expect him to hit closer to 300. However you want to view Colt Keith as a player, the way that I view it is Jace Young is here and Colt Keith is not. That's how I view it. And Colt Keith is a better player than Jace Young. So that's how I view the absence and how it impacts the Tigers offense. What do you think about Colt Keith being out? Is this one of those things that you feel like could come back to really hurt the Tigers in these final 6 games? Do you think it's not that big of a deal? Do you think it maybe impacts them more if they get into the playoffs and Colt Keith is not able to return for either the wild card series or for the ALDS if the Tigers get there. What are your thoughts on the Colt Keith injury and just how it impacts this team moving forward?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think it's actually pretty huge. As you said, he's not been tearing the cover off the ball or anything like that, but I think he hit in 5 straight games. And by the way, that was another one of those instances where they had like 3 straight hits to start the inning. Colt Keith, they score a run and then no more runs the rest of the game. So that was another classic thing there. But, beyond Colt Keith's pure talent level, it takes away a really nice chess piece for AJ Hinch. It's, maybe Keith is the first lefty off the bench. Maybe he's the second, maybe he's the third. You got McKinstry, you got Carpenter, but now he's gone. So the next lefty off the bench is either Trey Sweeney, Jace Young. Maybe Parker Meadow. Like they have some lefties, but I think you feel a lot better in a big situation with Colt Keith up there than you do with, Trey Sweeney, to be honest. And so I think that hurts. It just takes away another little strategic piece for them.
That's a fantastic point about the chess piece that Colt Keith presents for AJ Hinch. You go back to what happened in Saturday's game, right? The Tigers, they gave up the lead. They were ahead. Will Vest gave it up, and it was 6-5 going into the bottom of the 9th. Raisel Iglesias is on the mound for the Braves, and instead of pinch hitting Colt Keith because he's injured, Jace Young had to pinch hit against Raisel Iglesias. And then Kerry Carpenter had to pinch hit against Raisel Iglesias, and Jace Young popped out, Kerry Carpenter lined out, and then Gleyber Torres lined out. The game was over. The Tigers lost 6-5. But you feel a lot better about Colt Keith getting on base against Raisel Iglesias in the bottom of the 9th inning in a huge moment. And if Colt Keith gets on base, everything about that inning changes. Raisel Iglesias has to pitch Kerry Carpenter a little bit more carefully. And by pitching him a little bit more carefully, maybe he makes a mistake and Kerry Carpenter bangs it for a 2-run home run and the Tigers win the game. So there is a significant difference. You're spot on about that chess piece. Without Colt Keith, it's a lot different because I promise you, right-handed pitchers are not as afraid of Jace Young. They are more afraid of Colt Keith because Colt Keith has a track record of doing it. It's a bummer for him, but he finishes his 2025 season batting .256 with 13 home runs, 48 walks, 102 strikeouts. Again, 137 games, an OPS plus of 107, a regular old OPS of 746. He played a bunch of different positions, third base, second base, first base. Colt Keith, again, he's only 24 years old. He's very young, but going from his age 22 season to his age 23 season, now looking ahead to 2026 being his age 24 season, what do you think about Colt Keith as a whole this year? Was it a step forward? Is it what you wanted? Did you expect a little bit more in the power production? Do you think there's more to come? What are the thoughts on Colt Keith's season in 2025 and maybe where he still could be headed?
Yeah, I think overall it was solid progress. You saw him bump up the walk rate a little bit. The power was up a little bit, not necessarily in terms of over the fence power, but he hit for more extra base power.
And the velo was up too, the exit velocity.
Yeah. So he was, I think he's a guy throughout the minor leagues was always, he would have hit a roadblock when he first got to a new level, struggle a little bit and get better. You saw that beginning of this year and the beginning of last year. You'd like to see maybe him get off to a hotter start. But he's a guy that I think he's still a very talented player. I think he's got a chance to be at least an average big leaguer, if not above average. I don't know if he's ever going to be, all-star caliber, but he should be a solid piece for this team going forward, whether that's starting at third base next year, starting at second base. He should probably get a chance to play, every day a little bit more consistent. I'd like to see him face more lefties down the road. He hit lefties fine in the minors. So I think he could be a key piece in the future, but, it is unfortunate to see his season end this way.
The Tigers also cut Charlie Morton, just 9 starts after acquiring him from the Orioles at the July 31st trade deadline. Do you think he deserved a chance to pitch out of the bullpen? Because the way that I thought about it was Chris Paddock is still here and Charlie Morton has to go. And I understand that Charlie Morton was not throwing strikes with his fastball, and that's ultimately what did him in, was he was unable to locate his fastball. The walks were piling up. And when you compare Chris Paddock to Charlie Morton, from a stuff standpoint, I like Charlie Morton more than I like Chris Paddock. From a strike throwing standpoint, there's no question Chris Paddock is better than Charlie Morton right now. And so I understand why the Tigers made the decision that they made. The Tigers can trust Chris Paddock to throw pitches inside the strike zone. Now, they may get rocked, but at the same time, he is going to throw pitches in the strike zone. He's going to limit walks. That is who Chris Paddock is. Even though he's not a great pitcher, he's going to throw you strikes. Charlie Morton, on the other hand, he was just walking the house. And there were several times where he was able to spin that curveball in there and was able to get out of it. And more power to him, because that was really impressive, right? Charlie Morton would, give up a hit, walk 2 guys, and then somehow find a way to escape. We saw that time and time again over these 9 starts since coming to the Tigers. But ultimately, like, you start walking the number of guys the amount of guys that he was walking it made him unpitchable. And that's why the Tigers ultimately decided to move on. But I just wonder if there was a way to use him differently out of the bullpen where you could take advantage of the swing and miss curveball. Because you look at the Tigers, and not their pitching staff as a whole, but really their bullpen, there are not a lot of guys who miss bats in that bullpen. And you think, man, if you could have Charlie Morton come in there out of the bullpen, and if he could throw 70% curveballs or something crazy like that, right? Like, maybe that is sustainable and it works. Like, avoid the fastball, rely on the other stuff, use the curveball, try to miss some bats, get out of some big situations. He's got the playoff experience. He's got the rings. Like, he's been there, done that before. Would it have been better for the Tigers to hold on to Charlie Morton and let Chris Paddock go? Like, that was a dilemma the Tigers had. They talked about that all day on Saturday. Do you move Charlie Morton to the bullpen and ship somebody else out? Or do you just cut ties with them all together? And ultimately, Saturday night, the Tigers decided to move on from Charlie Morton. They announced the decision on Sunday. Would you have done it differently?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think you hit on the key points there. And if this were 3 weeks ago or right after the trade deadline, I think that's a great idea. Like, he does have swing and miss stuff. Charlie Morton has some nasty stuff still. He just, with how bad he's been in the first innings and how bad the strike throwing has been, I just don't know. Like, these are 6 games left. They don't have time to figure out if he can help them out of the bullpen now. It's, at best, you're probably getting like Alex Lang strike throwing out of the bullpen, right? Like, a bunch of curveballs below the zone. He's going to walk people and try to weasel out of it. Yeah, like I said, I think it would have worked maybe a couple weeks ago, but right now they just can't afford to give him chances in what should be 6 incredibly important tight games.
Yeah, it's been 21 walks in 29 innings for Charlie Morton in his last 7 starts. Ultimately, the Tigers moved on. If the Tigers advance to the postseason, what postseason scenario do you think is going to happen? We got to talk about this before we get out of here. What do you think is the most likely scenario here? Tigers have 6 games left, 3 against the Guardians, 3 against the Red Sox. What do you think ultimately happens? And then beyond what you think happens, what postseason scenario is best for the Tigers, assuming they're not going to be one of the top 2 AL division winners and get the bye? So they're going to be a wild card team no matter what. Let's just assume that. What do you think is going to happen? And then what scenario do you want to happen?
I think, cross your fingers and hope for 6-0. Not going to happen. I think really all you can really hope for is 3-3 or 4-2 down the stretch. And if they're capable of doing that, if they go 4-2, they take 2 games from Cleveland, 2 games from Boston, I think you're looking at knocking Cleveland out of the playoffs, and you're looking at being the 3 seed and facing probably Houston in the first round. And I think that's probably the best case scenario for them that's realistic, because Houston gets Isaac Paredes back, but they've been one of the worst potential playoff contenders down the stretch. The Tigers have been the worst, but you want to play the team that isn't all that great. Beyond that, yeah, like it's tough to think of what might actually happen. You go 2-4 and the wrong loss is the wrong time. Maybe you're sitting at home.
I love the website. Playoffstatus.com does a great job of breaking down odds for all different types of scenarios. Right now, the most likely first round scenarios for the Tigers, it's playing the Guardians, either with the Tigers as the number 6 seed and the Guardians as the number 3 seed, or the Guardians as the 6 seed and the Tigers as the 3 seed. Those are the 2 most likely scenarios, followed by the Tigers as the number 3 seed and the Astros as the number 6 seed. So those are the 3 most likely scenarios. 2 of them against the Guardians, 1 of them against the Astros. I like the Astros better than playing against the Guardians. Like, I don't want to play Cleveland if I'm the Tigers. I just get me as far away from Cleveland as possible. I'm not doing it again. I've had my heart broken 1 too many times by Cleveland. Like, that's how I would feel if I was the Tigers. I would want to stay as far away from them as possible. I like the idea of the Tigers being able to host the Astros at Comerica Park in a best of 3, hopefully locking it up before the end of the season, so then you can have Tarek Skubal ready for game 1. Worst case scenario is if the Tigers need Skubal on the last game of the season to get into the playoffs. Then that's real trouble, because then you don't get Tarek Skubal in that best of 3 wild card, at least, certainly not in game 1 or game 2. So it seems like it's going to be against the Guardians or the Astros if the Tigers do get in. And there's so much pressure on Tuesday's series opener against the Guardians. Again, playoffstatus.com does a great job of breaking down the odds. When it comes to winning the AL Central, right now, the Tigers are at a 45% chance. If the Tigers win, Tuesday's game, it's a 66% chance of winning the AL Central. If the Tigers lose Tuesday's game, it is a 28% chance of winning the AL Central. So you talk about the biggest game of the season. It feels like every game moving forward is going to be the biggest game of the season. And going into Tuesday, a win, 66% to win the AL Central. A loss, 28% to win the AL Central. So there's a lot riding on the Tigers in this series, especially in Tuesday's game. Nobody better than Tarek Skubal to be on the mound, though. Am I right about that?
Best you could hope for.
All right, let's get out of here. Thanks to Chris Brown from Tigers Minor League Report for co-hosting with me this week. Thanks to everyone out there for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Drop us a rating and comment what you think about the show. You can tell everybody about how much you love Chris Brown, because we've gotten a lot of those comments recently over the last 5 episodes. We expect to see more of those "We love Chris Brown" comments, and not the music artist, but the Tigers Minor League Report guy, on the 6th episode here with Chris Brown. Stick with free.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, sports editor Bill Bradley, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.